You're with Julian on the Brownout and a review of The Killer, the latest by author David Fincher, one of the preeminent American directors of the era. Though perhaps he is both capable of shape-shifting the most, he's also probably the most dependent on a good writer. As there's been a few lackluster films along the way. Alien 3, his debut, was fairly derided and disowned, but he really hit his stride with 7 in 95, and he underappreciated The Game, one of Michael Douglas's best ever performances, and I think the best David Fincher film is still Fight Club, an iconic film. But then something like Panic Room was the next film he made, and it is very, very tepid stuff. Even if you're focusing on such a narrow range, it still doesn't really bring anything interesting to the table for me at all. I think Zodiac is his most overrated film. I think it's one of those films where absolutely nothing really happens and it doesn't really go anywhere. And people mistake that for class. It's beautifully mounted, and the performances and everything, but each individual scene is great, but overall, I just do not rate it. I do completely. And The Curse of Benjamin Button was when he actually went for Oscar Gold, possibly his worst film. The Social Network was fantastic, obviously, and the fact it didn't win Best Picture was a farce. So he really, and then he did the remake of The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, which I think is superior. I didn't give the original version of that a good review at all. And I didn't really rate the David Fincher reimagining of it, but it is watchable, and I think the two leads in it are fantastic. And probably his best since all the way back to The Social Network is Gone Girl. That's amazing. And one of the best female characters of this century, I think. I thought Mank was really good, the one about Citizen Kane being written. I thought that was a great film, and it didn't get as much appreciation as it deserved. He's come back with The Killer, and the other element to this equation is the actor Michael Fassbender, who was everywhere at one point, and then had a few rough years and just vanished, and those were largely due to the incredibly poor reception of the last two X-Men movies and a couple of side projects bombing, and he seemed to disappear, and it's the first film he's done for quite a while. It's based around a hired assassin failing to do a job and then dealing with the aftermath. Now, this is a totally and much more ordinary film than I was led to believe. I expected this was Day of the Jackal, which I should do a review of that because it's a masterpiece. In fact, I probably have reviewed it and I've just forgotten. I expected a very dry psychological examination of the mind of a hitman and that world. But I didn't get that film at all, and I was annoyed at first that I didn't. What I got was a fairly rote, ordinary thriller where we've seen multiple times the idea of the trope of someone working their way up the ladder of a criminal organisation, Payback style, Point Blank style. There are dozens of films, Drive. It is in that pocket, which I was very surprised about. It really does follow that trope of the guy is exacting revenge against an organisation, working his way up the ladder. And there have been 100 films on that exact same trope. I suppose the other element, which is the saving grace of this film, is I never expected it to be a comedy. And in a part, it is. And I think that is the thing that actually changes it from being as boring as anything into a hugely watchable film. It's less like The Day of the Jackal than it is like something like In Bruges. It's a very black comedy. And even though every element of it is something that we've seen before in other films, it felt new. And Fassbender, I think, will get an Oscar nomination. Even though he's not playing it deadpan serious like I don't even know if I would say No Country for Old Men, Javier Bardem was not leaning into the comedy as well. But his reactions are often quite amiably goofy to when things go wrong, and he's famously not blinked in the whole film. It's unbelievably watchable. I found it so incredibly watchable that I've watched it twice already and could happily sit through it a third time. There's something about it's beautifully made. So scene on scene, everything is shot beautifully, it's soundtracked beautifully, and it's got an incredible and will be Oscar-nominated score from David Fincher's favourite go-to music score artist, Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails and Atticus Ross, who have already, I think, won Oscars for soundtrack work on David Fincher films, maybe actually The Social Network. They do a brilliant job here, and we get about 15 songs by the Smiths, who are the only musical act that the killer will listen to. If I do have one gripe about the production on this film, it's that the sound balance is often annoying. They play 2 seconds of a Smiths song and drop the volume to nothing. But they do it so frequently, it's very jarring. I wish they'd left the volume levels up a lot more in this film. So we get Michael Fassbender on a job in Paris, and we go through his thought processes. It takes forever, and that's when I still thought it was going to be this psychological drama. And it all goes horribly wrong. And when he gets back to his hideaway in the Dominican Republic, he finds that his partner has been brutally assaulted by the hitman sent to kill him because he has screwed up. And the rest of the movie is him progressing through the different chain of command to reach the ultimate goal. It's just very, very watchable. Like, everything about it seems so... Like I said, I don't like the fact that they keep turning the volume up and down on the Smith songs in it. I wish they'd just let them run a bit more. And it is 2 seconds of a song, and then it's just, like, turned right down so it's in the background. Michael Fassbender's never been better. He's superb here. Tilda Swinton shows up for a show-stopping performance. She's absolutely great. And not many other people really show out that much. I think Arliss Howard as the ultimate client of the Paris job is very, very good, as is Kerry O'Malley as a secretary that gets caught up in everything. And there are lots of very good scenes. There's one where he attacks another hitman in Florida, which is a long-form sequence, which is very, very good. And the whole Tilda Swinton sequence is extremely good, as she kind of relives the Doctor Strange film a little bit. If you remember her sort of greeting her mortality in that film, and the fact that she'd been sort of lying a bit to get there, it's kind of redolent of that movie. She's very, very strong, and you kind of wish that they'd given her a little bit more, I'm bleeding, a little bit more to do in the film as well. But overall, it is just unexpectedly watchable. It's not a dry, dull, serious film at all. It's actually pretty amusing. And in the whole, I don't think there's a scene that Fassbender isn't the front and center character in the whole film. And he's pitch perfect casting here. It suits him so well. So it is an unexpectedly great watch. So I wouldn't have said that, there's anything particularly great about it other than the soundtrack, perhaps. But overall, it's just so watchable. So I'm going to give The Killer an 8.5 out of 10, which is more than I gave the last Mission Impossible film. From the